Thank you and welcome to Gadgets for Family, the tech podcast for the mom who everyone asks, what laptop should I buy? And the grandpa that's always asking, hey, what laptop should I buy? Spoiler alert, it's still the MacBook Air for me, Greg. Did that change after last night for you?
For 98% of people, no.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
MacBook Air, buy the MacBook Air.
yeah, yeah. So also, and everyone else who's looking to get more out of their lives through tech. I'm your host, Jay Benjamin.
And I'm your host, Greg Cunningham. Thank you for joining us for episode 22 on All Halloween. Halloween, right? Because I guess yesterday was
Right.
All Hallows Eve. Today's Halloween, whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah. So last night, Apple had their Scary Fast event, right? We knew it was coming. Well, it was kind of a rush, right? Usually they give like over a month for people to prepare to come out and all of that, but it wasn't going to be one of those kind of events where all of the influencers and all of the tech podcasters and insiders fly out to California to go to a show. This was just basically an announcement rather than just dropping these things on the store, letting people dig through the specs themselves. They had an old-fashioned kind of on-stage keynote announcement. Only
Well,
it wasn't on stage.
I think part of the problem, right, was the rumors went back and forth. I mean, even Gurman at
Right,
one point was saying we're done for the year. And so that's why I
right.
think it was a bigger surprise is then all of a sudden all the rumors heat up and said, oh, it looks like we're going to get something. And then lo and behold, 10 days before, Gurman says, yep, we're going to have an event on the 30th or 31st. And that's what
Yeah.
happened. So I think that's why it felt like, where did this, like it came out of the blue, right?
Yeah, yeah. It seemed like it was rushed, but believe me, Apple does nothing rushed, right? They're prepared for whatever they're announcing.
I think they
So
just laugh at us, all those rumors, and everybody saying we're not doing this or they're doing that. And Apple's marketing team and
I
their
think
executives
so.
are in the background going,
Yeah,
"We know
yeah.
better than
They're gonna
you
be
do."
surprised.
Yeah,
So nothing really caught us off guard though, right? Some of the things we expected, some of the rumor mills started swirling up and seems like most of it was right. But I figured instead of our regularly scheduled program, we're going to talk through what was announced. Right, there was a couple of new products. Nothing, I say new, but nothing really new. Um, um, Mostly just speed bumps here, but we'll get into that here in a second. Um, but I figure we'll talk through that and just share some information and our thoughts on that, and also go into whether we're gonna buy into this new hardware and things like that. What do you think, Rick?
yeah. I think right for the post show, we got to talk through the scariness that is my brain. It's appropriate. We're trying to get into my head on Halloween, right? Because it's not pretty up there.
Yeah, yeah, and anyone who's been keeping up, Greg is frustrated with his current setup, with his current MacBook. It's getting a little old, some battery issues. So we've waited around for this to kind of decide what we're going to do in the future. So yeah, stick around in the post show, and we'll go into a deeper dive about what Greg decides and what I decided, if anything, to um, to do about these new Macs.
And I think one of the big questions that maybe we'll try and answer is, did this clear up the Mac lineup?
Right,
Right.
right,
And we can get into that because we've talked about how buying an Apple computing device, whether it's an iPad or a Mac, iPhone is pretty simple. You can figure out
hmm
which one you need there. But buying a computing device for your needs is not easy. And the whole thing around the iPad confusion in the line, every
yeah,
podcast I listen to lately has been talking about how the iPad lineup is just so confusing. And the Mac lineup, to a certain extent, has been that problem too. So maybe we'll answer that question.
right, right. And hopefully some of this doesn't bleed over into the already confused iPad lineup, but I'm thinking it might,
Yeah.
right? So, but we'll get into that. So, before we jump into the show, don't forget to share this with anyone you know that's currently looking for a laptop, a MacBook, or any kind of computing device. And and like we said at the top, anyone is looking to get more out of their lives through tech. Also, check out the blog post, check out the YouTube. Um, Also, too, we still have our Patreon out there. If you guys are interested, if you're in the position to be able to share and support the show in that way, we would really appreciate it. You know, even though we're not buying some of these devices, um, we still would like to get our hands on some of that stuff to test it out for you guys, to give you our opinions and what do we think and how we think that you can fit that device into your world and how you use things. So anything you contribute would go a long way in helping us do that. So we really appreciate you guys' support. So let's catch up on last week, Greg. You know, I had some issues with my router, right? I was ready to go into the living room, rip that thing off of the wall. After speaking with you, you sent me some recommendations. I found some other ones online. I had finally settled on one. I had it in my device, I mean, in my Amazon cart for same day delivery, but I didn't have time to really work on it, right? I had to go get out to the shop, turn out a few orders, get ready for some things. And later that night, I came in and said, well, let me try to speed this thing up until I can find a router that we want and replace it with. And yeah, found out it was a rookie mistake on my part.
All right. Well, I have two questions for you. One, what was the mistake? And then two, which one had you settled on, even though you didn't pull the trigger?
Right, right. So, and I say it was my rookie mistake. The mistake was me not checking, right? Me assuming that everything was set the way I said it, and it wasn't, right? All these issues started thinking that all of my, configurations and stuff had maintained. Well, the mistake was I logged into the AT&T router because I was going to do a reset on everything, right? So I logged into the AT&T router, which was just in IP pass-through mode, right? I just wanted their router, their equipment to act as a modem, and I had my own fancy, way too expensive Nighthawk router, right? So I log in, and on the splash page, it gives you like a general overview of the network, right? I'm used to seeing nothing there, just where you can do a speed test and a few other things. Well, I saw my garage door on the AT&T side of the router. So I'm like, wait, that's strange. So I scroll down the page and I see the front door. I see the light in from the shop and I see Apple TV. And I'm like, wait, these devices aren't supposed to be showing up in this router, right? Because it's not a router, right? I have it set to just IP pass through. So it turns out AT&T did some kind of either an update or router, and it cleared all of those settings out. So basically, it started acting as a router and treated my router as just a device on the network, along with everything else. So basically, I would come in, turn on the lights, or whatever task that I wanted to do. Each device was getting routed twice, right? Because it was going through my router, which it should be, and even some of the devices in the home, like my Xbox and the um, my network attached storage, they have static IP addresses, right? They stay at their addresses. So it was just causing all kinds of conflicts. That's what was bogging down the network. Everything was so slow to look at a YouTube video. It was back like the early days of internet where it just buffer and buffer and buffer, and then it finally plays. We got so used to it that that's why I was so frustrated. Anyway, long story short, reconfigured the AT&T router back to just a modem. I reset my modem already. Remember, I did it right before the show last week, right before we recorded. Reset my router, so ended up going back through reconfiguring all the settings, and not only does it work back to normal, it works better than it did before all of the problems started. Right, so now I'm like, I don't really need a router. You know what I mean? It was just all some configuration issues or whatever. The router's working fine. I'm glad I didn't rip it off of the wall. And yeah, so things are back to normal and better than ever.
Yeah, I mean,
So
there's two. You want to go to one of two extremes, right? Either you use the equipment that your internet provider gives you, and use
right.
that as the router. Which, like for my in-laws that have their two phones, a couple of tablets, and a computer,
Hmm.
not a big deal, right? I mean, 3 or 4 devices on that thing, it's going to be just fine. Or
Right.
you turn it
Right.
into a modem, like you've done, and use something like an Eero or other stuff. And I'm just glad that I don't have to worry about that anymore. When we lived with our in-laws for a while, I had high-speed internet put in, and that's what I did is I turned the cable box where the internet came in into a modem and was
Right.
using a different setup. But here with the gigabit stuff, there's no modem, right? I mean, it's just a
Right.
little thin little box, and it comes straight in, and I go from the it almost looks like a Cat 5 box and goes straight um into my Eero and
Yep.
call it good. So
Right. Right. So you were asking what I settled on. So it was between the Euro you sent me, the one that you sent, the Pro version. Awesome, way out of my price range. I mean, that was some professional level stuff, right? We're talking, I think the base model was like 1,400, 1,200. It was up there, way more than I wanted to spend, but I love those specs. So I said, well, let's go based on something like that. Maybe we can dumb down those specs a little bit and I can find something within my price range. And I actually did. I actually did. So there's a TP Link Deco, and I watched several reviews. No one had any complaints about it. There were a few things that just didn't matter to me. That there wasn't a problem. So the TP Link Deco is a tri-band Wi-Fi 6E. So it wasn't Wi-Fi 7 like the Euro Pro that you sent, but 6E, which still gave me the speeds I need, 5,500 square feet. Um, it was something like 70 devices or more. It was a lot of devices. So the devices weren't going to be a problem. Up to 200 devices. Actually, that was way off. So up to 200 devices. It was just an awesome one. The price range was really good. Um, so if you're looking for a router, um, I would recommend that one. That was actually one I had in my cart to purchase same day delivery from Amazon, and yeah, end up repairing my problem. So I'm going to stick with what I have for, at least till next year.
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the Eero Max 7, which is a brand new one. I mean, they
Right.
just
Right.
released it, and it's $600 for the base. So, to give you an idea, in our home, I've got a base and one, two, three repeaters,
Right.
right? And so if I were to do that same thing, so the base is $600, and then I would need the whatever repeaters go along with it. I'm not actually seeing the repeaters because I've got a split level home. So yeah,
Yes.
I'd probably be talking about $1,000 by the time I was all in,
Right.
right, to do this. So it's not cheap to go with this mesh stuff. But it definitely works better than most things. So yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm glad that issue worked out in the most cost effective way possible because I really didn't want to spend that extra. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you.
So Greg, you have a tiny tip for us this week, right?
Yeah, so I mean this is a super tiny tip, but they redid in the messages because I use messages a ton, right? So
Hmm.
they redid all of that, and what I didn't realize is, so you press on the plus button and that gets you all of the things, right? I mean, it gets you
Yeah.
into the adding photos, adding all of this kind of stuff. But there's a shortcut to get to photos, which I do a ton because I send you a lot of photos. And so
Right.
if you just tap and hold on the plus button, it takes you straight into the photos. No drawer,
Okay.
no nothing. So you just go straight into photos. So just tap and hold. I'll put a short out on it. But yeah, so that's super good, and it works on the phone. I don't know, it's not working on my mini because it doesn't have, you know,
Yeah.
some of that kind of stuff. But definitely on the phone, you just tap and hold, and it'll take you straight into the photos in the
Okay.
messages. So
That is a cool tip because yeah, with you and my brothers, we do send a lot of photos. So I think we'll get some use out of that. That anything that'll make it quicker and easier to use to streamline that whole process of sharing photos. I'm all for. So yeah, that's a pretty good tip.
yeah,
So we had some follow up from last week, right? You and I talked about import and passwords, right? You were going to switch over to the Apple Keychain
yeah.
instead of using your subscription service. So what did you find out about that?
Well, so just a little background in case folks haven't heard that. So I switched over to LastPass, and I had a
Right.
family plan a couple of years ago for a few reasons. One is I gave my mom a simple way to actually track her passwords as well. And
Hmm.
then I also didn't want my passwords on my company Mac. This is back when I had a real job. And
Yeah.
so if you put them on your keychain, it's just
This
going to
is a
be
real
there,
job.
right? Yeah, yeah. So I had switched over to LastPass. Now, in the interim, LastPass has had some security issues that we talked about, and
Yep.
it's an extra subscription, but also Apple's gotten much better. So now you can actually do family share of passwords in
Right. Which me
Keychain,
and my wife
and
we do.
yep. So I decided I wanted to go back to it. The problem is I have a couple hundred, right, passwords in LastPass and stuff like that. And I got thinking,
Yeah.
there's got to be an easier way than going in and redoing this. And I've done secure passwords. I've let the systems generate my passwords for quite some time, which
Yeah.
means that they're not, you
You're
know,
not typing those in. Yeah.
no,
You're right.
absolutely not. So,
So, and
um,
I had mentioned too that there was no way to import, at
yeah,
least as far as iOS. Well, great,
yeah.
you found a way how to do that.
Yeah, there's actually an import and an export function within the passwords system um, within anyway within Apple's keychain system. And so then I also looked, and LastPass has an export, so you
Right.
can actually export all of your passwords and everything out to a CSV, and then you can then import those in. So that's basically what you do. You sign into LastPass. You use for me, did this all on my Mac. That was the easiest way to do it.
Right.
Signed
So it's
in,
through Mac
and
OS.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I used the browser extension of LastPass to export all the passwords out into a CSV. Then I took that CSV and imported it into Keychain, and it tells me which
Hmm.
ones it rejected for whatever reason. Either there was a conflict, or they didn't have some of the stuff that Apple requires, like their secure notes in LastPass, because they don't have a website and a user ID and stuff like that. They didn't want to import
Hmm.
in. But it told me exactly which ones and why they didn't import in. So did that, and then I signed out and signed in as my mom, because I
Hmm.
needed to get all her stuff out of there too, and did that same thing. And it was funny because I told all of our family, I said, y'all need to get out of LastPass by the end of, by Thanksgiving, so I don't have to redo the subscription. And
Right.
Dustin said, I was just yelling at LastPass yesterday. So,
So he's done with it.
he was ready to get out. I don't think Karen had migrated all of her passwords over, so she doesn't have a whole lot of
Hmm.
work to do. And Wyatt was like, I don't have any passwords in LastPass. The only thing he had been using it for was for the shared ones, like for Disney Plus and stuff like
Okay.
that. So
So
anyway,
he's
it's
been using Keychain.
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
it's
Good.
not going to be as big of a deal. And so, I mean, I did all of that in the course of just a few hours. I mean, it still takes some time because it's passwords, right? You can't
Hmm.
lose this stuff. And so I've not used LastPass in about a week. Um, so it's all been Keychain, and I've
Right.
got those CSVs. I've got those password protected somewhere in a nice safe place, so that I have a backup in case anything didn't come across that I needed to, that I didn't catch.
Right.
And yeah, it was not nearly as big of a deal as I thought it might be. So
Right. Right. Well, good deal. I think that's a good tip, especially for anyone who's looking to get off of LastPass or some other password saver or locker, and you're like, oh, I just got so many of them. I just don't want to deal with the hassle. If you do it through Mac OS, it streamlines that process for you. So, how many got rejected that you had to manually enter?
6 or 8.
Okay,
And
not
most
bad
of
at
that
all.
was secure notes. Like, a lot of people in password managers will store like their social security number or their IDs
Right.
numbers, and account numbers and some of that kind of stuff. And because those didn't have some of the required info that Apple requires, like website, user ID, and password.
Yeah, username, password.
So,
Yeah.
and they don't have a way to really put secure notes in Keychain. So,
Hmm.
you can hack that. You could put a fake web address and a fake user ID and a fake password, and then just use the notes section, right?
Yeah.
And put put the rest of the stuff in there, you could do that, or you could use something like Notes and secure it down, or
Right.
some
You can
other
like
way.
put a
So
password on your notes now, which is what I
yeah,
do.
yeah. So there's ways to get around it. So it's not quite as robust, but I have way more confidence that it's not going to get hacked than I
Same
ever
here.
did in LastPass. And there are other options out there, 1Password, and there were a couple of other new ones that were up and coming too that did this kind of stuff. But I'm all in on the Apple ecosystem, so why not use it? It's generated a pass key for my Apple ID, all of those kinds of things. So, and the other piece of this was two-factor authentication codes. So they've added the ability to do two-factor authentication codes right in Keychain as well.
Hmm.
And so I don't have to use. So I had Microsoft Authenticator, which is what I have to use, right, for my Office subscription, because
Right.
that's what you use, right? So I still have that one out there now, but I had a whole bunch of stuff in Authy, and so I don't have to use Authy anymore, which is great.
Right.
So everything's just kind of down in is all in my it's all in Keychain now. And so with
Right.
Apple, like on my Mac or whatever, it'll say, do you want us to pre-fill in the two-factor authentication code? And I say yes, and it fills it in. I don't have to go find it, and I'm good to go.
Right. Right. Nice and smooth.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I like that tip. That's a really good tip. So one of the things I hadn't got a chance to play with, I did do the update. I hadn't got a chance to really play with it because you have been sending me some updates on one of our favorite watch faces that I hadn't got around to put in because I've been out and I needed access to whether it's going to rain or not. And we did have some sporadic rain, temperature changes, and things like that. But Greg, you wanted to talk about WatchOS 10.1.
Yeah, just real quick. So it's out. There wasn't a whole lot to it.
Yeah,
Double tap was the biggest feature that came out for most people.
yeah, the
It
feature that
looks
everyone was
good.
waiting for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it looks good. I've heard responding to messages is great because it's defaulting to it. And it looks like it's a little more robust than we initially thought, because you and I kind of went, oh, yeah, no, never mind. It won't do us any good.
Yeah,
So it looks like it's a little better. And so, yeah, I'm excited that that's out there for those that can take advantage of it. But the best thing by
yeah.
far is the
Switching
Snoopy
to it
watch
right now.
face. Yeah. And
Switching right now.
there is a trick or treat animation out today with Snoopy in a mask, and Woodstock drops a candy while he's flying around, and it drops in Snoopy's bag. So, but
Nice,
I'll bet
nice.
I've seen since 10.1 dropped, I'll bet there's 20 plus new animations.
Yeah,
So,
that
so
is
they're
really good.
still adding animations. I mean, I just saw one a minute ago where Snoopy's laying on the doghouse and Woodstock's on his stomach, and he starts doing music, and Snoopy bops him on the head like an alarm clock, and he shuts up. So there are
I like that.
new animations for Snoopy. Rock on.
Yeah, yeah. So, oh, I got a Halloween one. Yep, he's in a pumpkin and he pops out of the jack-o'-lantern and he says boo and scares Woodstock off. So, you know,
I haven't even
I
seen that one yet.
yep, I always loved this watch face from the very beginning. And it seems like they're probably getting the same feedback from us, that they're I mean, they're getting it from everyone else. Everyone loves it. So hopefully they continue every holiday throughout the year to update this watch face until WatchOS 11, where we get something else that's new and that's new and fun.
And it is a
So
lot of
yeah,
work.
really, really cool.
I mean, it is quite a bit
Yeah,
of work to do this, right? I mean,
I
there
think
was an
so.
article that came out where they talked about how long it took them, and they had to work with the Charles Schultz estate that they have the rights to Peanuts to, and how
Hmm.
they had to configure this stuff. So it's not easy. So
Yeah. Well, thank you, Apple. That is something that we really enjoy on a daily basis. Every time I look at the watch, even some of the ones that I've seen over and over again, I still love them. I still
yeah,
love them. Snoopy's doing the moonwalk with a big boom box on his shoulder. Have you seen that one?
I have. That's a new one.
That is pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yep, I absolutely love it.
All right, so let's jump into the main topic here. And like I said, Apple did have their scary fast keynote. So let's share our thoughts on a few things. So, and again, we're not going to give you a ton of details, right? We have links to compare the different models and everything new in the show notes, so you can always click on that and go and check out some of the some of the specs and some of the new features and things like that yourself. But let's just jump into it. So, talking about the keynote in general, right? Just the overall feel of it. What do you think about the keynote?
I thought it was good. I love the spooky theme,
Yeah,
right? And Apple Park with that kind of theme would be really awesome to walk around. I don't do haunted houses, so I wouldn't want it to be like a full-blown haunted house, but just to have the
right.
smoke and the music and all that kind of stuff would have been really, really cool. So
Yeah,
I like that. Um, it was super short, right? It was like
it
30
was
minutes.
right to the point.
So
Right
yeah.
to the point. Yeah,
Yep. And then the other thing that I don't know if you caught this at the end, but at the very end it said filmed all on iPhone and edited on Mac. And then I saw a headline afterwards that the whole thing was filmed on an iPhone 15 Pro Max, which
right.
I think is cool.
So I didn't catch that. I did see because we were messaging back and forth as the keynote was going on, and you did tell me at the end, and I'm like, all I can think about was they filmed that at night. Look how well that phone performed at night, right? I didn't even realize that it was an iPhone 15. So yeah, it handled the darkness perfectly. So that was really cool. For me, I liked it. My first thought was I've never seen Apple Park at night, right? Maybe I haven't forgot about it, but I don't think they've ever did a flyover at night like that. And to see it lit up and they still have the like some of the accent or landscape lighting and stuff like that. It was really cool visiting the park at night. So really, really good to show a different side than we always see, right? We always see it in perfect lighting during the day, and the weather seems so nice. I'm a little, I'm not a fan of the landscape in there, how they leave the grass so wild looking in certain areas and all of that. But hey, I'm sure it's a reason why they do that. But no, it looks really cool at night. Another
Yeah.
thing that stood out to me. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
No, keep going.
Well, another thing that stood out to me was that orange ocean band that Tim Cook was wearing. Now, I have my Alpine loop, no, the trail loop in orange, but to see it in orange and the ocean band and actual lighting, right? And to see him using it, well, I know they have the Apple lighting and stuff, but looked really good. I think I want one of those now in orange. So that kind of stood out to me.
Yeah,
So
I'm not big on the orange. I mean, I wish it's not bad. It's not nearly as bad as I thought it would be. The orange on the
right,
Ultra, right? The ring and then the action button. Luckily, I wear the watch with the action button to the inside. And so yeah, I don't I'm not big at the orange. So,
right, right. Well, being a Yankees fan, I wouldn't expect you to love orange as much as
oh, come on.
I'm just joking. I'm a huge Yankees fan too. I told Greg it's hard to root for the Yankees and the Astros sometimes, but usually I do. But a lot of my shirts have, especially my Astros shirts, a lot of them just
Yeah.
have so much orange in them that it always makes my band pop when I'm wearing the orange. So yeah, I think I'm going to jump on one of those.
I don't want to offend, so I won't talk about Houston sports. I lived in Houston for 10 years, so we'll
Right.
move on.
Well, Greg, if anyone could have an opinion, Greg is allowed to have an opinion about Houston sports. So, but let's jump into what was announced, right? And it didn't seem like, well, for me, it didn't seem like a lot of the rumors were too far off, right? Except for one, I think I didn't really hear a lot about. So, and that was the new family of M3 processors, right? We knew it was coming. We knew at least two were coming. At least I did. I'm pretty sure you've heard some of the insiders talk about all three. But so now we have three flavors. Now it comes the M3, which is already going to be leaps and bounds over the M2, right? Well, I say
Yep.
leaps and bounds. More on that later. But we also have an M3 Pro and an M3 Max, right? So Apple looks like they're going with a small, medium, and large kind of approach to their silicon now.
Yeah, the only one we're missing is the Ultra because there is an
The
M2
Ultra, yep,
Ultra, right?
yeah,
But we won't see that until they announce probably the next Mac Pro, if
yep,
that, right?
yep. Or the what is it? The Studio, the beefed up Mac Mini,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
Studio one. I think that has the Ultra in it too. So, what do you think about that? Was that? I mean, again, it wasn't. It didn't catch us off guard. It wasn't surprising, but
Now, everybody knew it was going to 3 nanometer technology, which it just means smaller stuff on the chip. But
yeah,
what caught me there was the discussion, and this stuff is way more technical than I can ever comprehend,
yes,
right? But they
yeah,
talked about the next gen GPU, and they talked about how old GPUs took the most you would ever need and allocated that to every task. And now they're
yes,
actually allocating only what is needed, so you get better GPU utilization. And then they talked about a whole bunch of stuff like ray tracing and mesh shading and all that kind of stuff, which is
right,
all
right,
going to be good for games. So,
right,
um, so they did compare. Most of the time they spent comparing this to the M1, right? Because it's a bigger leap
right,
from M1 than it is from M2. But no matter what you look at, the GPUs are almost 2 times faster than the M2. The CPUs are 15% faster than the M2, and the efficiency cores are
right.
30% faster. So it's all about fast, 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 fast,
Yeah,
fast, scary, fast.
scary fast, and that was the point of the whole scary thing, which we kind of knew when they said scary fast. So yeah, it was a lot of techno babble. They did talk about a lot of the new features and things like that, but the only thing that stood out to me that made sense as I'm listening was the mesh shading and the ray tracing, and that's something you hear with high end PC gaming setups, right? Those high end powerful laptops and gaming systems and stuff. And basically, what it does, it makes water look wetter, right? When it's showing lakes and rivers running, it makes the water look shiny, and it makes metal look more textured and shiny and stuff like that, which is really good for gaming. And we mentioned, from WWDC on, Apple seems like they're going to really make a push towards gaming, right? I think they want some of this a bite of Microsoft's Apple when it comes to gaming and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
um, I look forward to some big things coming with this. They're really moving towards gaming. I think they want to snatch some PlayStation and Xbox controllers out of people's hands and put iPhones in their hands, right? And iPads in their hands for gaming. So they're really attracting some AAA titles, and
Yeah.
I think this is just going to get more studios on board when they can really make their games look as good as they look on, a Series S or a PlayStation 5 on a MacBook. Well, hey, they're just going to throw it on all three, right?
Yeah. And
As
there
long
was
as
even
Microsoft doesn't buy their company,
everybody's seeing that Apple is trying to do the gaming stuff, because there was even a
right?
rumor that the reason they did this event so late at night was that it was core business hours in Japan, and they assumed there was going to be some partnership
Right,
with a
right. I
Japanese
didn't think
game
about that.
company,
Yes,
and that didn't happen. But I think there's a lot of stuff. Let's have Apple and Nintendo talk. That would be awesome.
that would. So those were the new processors that were announced. So we did get not a lot of hardware, but we did get some hardware, right? And the MacBook Pro was something that we've been talking about for the last couple of episodes, right? The last few episodes, mainly because you were waiting around to see what you were going to do, and um, nothing really surprising. We expected the speed bump. Little disappointed that we didn't get any a form factor change, right? There's really not much difference other than a new color. But let's get into the MacBook Pro. So pricing, Apple pulled a Apple-esque kind of trick,
Yeah.
Jedi mind
Yeah.
trick on us.
They
Yeah,
came in and said, well, as before, the 14-inch MacBook Pro used to start at whatever it was, 1999 or 1799 or whatever it is. They
right,
said now it starts at 1599, which is actually the price that the 13-inch MacBook Pro, the one that had the touch bar that is now discontinued, that's where that started at. And so yeah, sort of kind of dropped the price on that, and I got super excited because I thought it was going to save me a whole bunch of money, and we'll talk about that later. But so
Mhm.
yeah, pricing is basically the same depending on what you're going to buy. If you're going to buy the entry level version of the MacBook Pro 14-inch, then yeah, you'll get it cheaper than you would have previously if you weren't buying the
Right.
13-inch. Now, you know, as far as you said, form factor stuff, they only revamped these MacBook chassis, I think, earlier this year, right? Was it no, or was it last
Right.
year? So this
It
this
was last year.
yeah, this design, this physical design has only been around a year or a little bit more. So I'm not surprised that they didn't do that. Like you said, they did give us color, and
Right.
me likey. Me likey.
Yes.
It's black. It's finally black.
Yeah. A space black is
Yeah.
what they call it, right? Space black.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's not
So
dark mode black like I'm looking at right now, but it's way, way, way darker. And I've got a silver MacBook Pro because that's what the company gave everybody that got them. They just bought them all in silver. But I've
yeah.
always been a space gray, or I always want the darker version since they won't give us real colors. So
Right. Right. And they mentioned some kind of new technology that they're using to get the color into the metal that's going to eliminate smudges and stuff like that. So yeah, the new space black color looks really good, right? And I think that's going to be the hot item this holiday season. So
yeah.
specs again, we're not going to go too far into specs, but again, they have a 14.2 LED or liquid retina display, XDR display. Looks really amazing. If you guys hadn't seen it on some of these current models, swing by an Apple store and check it out. Of course, the M3 processor in the M3 chip in the entry level, the intro level, and then it's up from there, right? M3 Pro, M3 Max, and you get up to 16 cores with those. Or CPU, GPU, you get up to 40 cores with the M3 Pro, and yeah, memory from 24 gigabytes of memory up to 128 gigabytes. Storage, you get 2 terabytes up to 8 terabytes. 22 hours. That didn't change, right?
No, but I don't
The
think
battery life.
it's not quite accurate because it's about which
Yeah,
models that really applies to. So you can get on the low end. So if I just talk about the 14, put the 16 aside for just a second because it's
right.
got a bigger thing. But on the low end, if you get the entry level MacBook 14 with the M3 chip, that'll get you 22 hours. If you get the
Yes.
Pro chip, it's going to go down to um, 18 hours battery life. So
Yeah.
because I've been in looking at all the specs on these things, and that's really what it was. So yeah, it just depends on which chip you get, because the bigger the chip you get, the more, the more cores, the
Yeah.
more it's gonna eat
More
through
power
from a
hungry.
power
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah. So
So yeah, yeah. So a pretty big dip, and then like you said, these are at like optimal usage anyway. So
yeah.
don't expect for you to really get to work on that thing and get 22 hours out of it. It's not, your heavy usage on that entry level model still may only get you, 17, 18 hours of battery life. So just don't be surprised. This is all in ideal conditions when they quote you these 22-hour, battery life, all day battery life. But
Here,
still
here's
should
the
be a lot
thing.
more efficient.
Here's the thing about battery life, and I had to go back and listen to this because I
Mhm.
am on the last Intel version of the 13-inch MacBook Pro.
Right.
And one of they were talking about how much faster it'll be and all that kind of stuff. Great. But I'm having problems with battery life. And the comment that they made on screen was that you'll get up to 11 additional hours of battery life compared to the
Mhm.
Intel MacBook Pro.
Right.
So
Right.
if I can get 5 or 6 with my usage, I would be happy, because right now I don't get 5 or 6 hours period, end of
Mhm.
story. Depending on what I'm doing, I get somewhere in the 3 to 5 range. So if I could go from 3 to 5 to absolutely 5 to 12,
Yes.
That's a massive difference for me. So that's where I get excited about the battery life. And I knew that was the case. I've got a mid 2020 model that came out with the M1 version of the MacBook Pro in late 2021. So,
Hmm.
I just missed that. So, yeah, that's where I get excited about the battery life. And then I get excited about the efficiency and how much faster they'll be and being able to put more memory in one and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's solid updates. So I mean nothing earth shattering, but if you're in the market
Yeah.
for a MacBook Pro, then this is where you want to go.
Right. Mm. So before we jump into, who should buy what, there was another announcement, and that was an update to the iMac. Right now, this was, I think, got stage time because they were talking about the pros. But this is really something that they could have just threw up on the store, right? It was just a speed bump,
Yeah, but
right?
it's a
There's no
double
new
jump,
colors.
right? I mean, the iMac never got the M2. It was still sitting on the M1.
There were
So
no M2 iMacs.
no,
Okay,
no.
okay, I didn't see
So
that.
it's yes, they still could have done it with a
Yeah,
press release, right? Because if you're in the market for a 24-inch iMac, you're not too terribly worried about which
yeah,
processor is sitting in it.
portability and battery life and
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. It's
So,
always plugged in, so it's always going to run at the most efficient, power level. So yeah, you're right. You're not worried about the processing and all of that. But if we're talking about the M1, like you mentioned earlier, it is a big leap over the M1
yeah,
because all the big numbers that they were saying was compared to the M1 and not necessarily the M2. So this is a big jump. I love the iMac. Um, it just doesn't fit into
yeah.
anything that this is a student kind of student, high school student, college student in your dorm kind of. Because even if you were a professional, and again, I know we said we're going to talk about who is for what, but even if you were a professional creating content or video content or something like that, you still kind of want to go with a Mac Pro,
Yeah,
right? Or
yeah.
a MacBook Pro or something like that. So the iMac is still not for you.
I think
So yeah,
I see this as the computer. It's the cool one because it's got all the
it
cool
is really
colors.
cool.
The color
Yeah, it
stayed the
looks really
same,
nice.
right? And it's a great
Hmm.
machine. But I see this as the machine where a family says, we need a computer
Yeah,
and it's going to sit in the living room and people are going to take turns using the computer for
right.
homework or whatever the case may be. And so that's the kind of computer that I see this as, right? If you want an all in
Yeah,
one, if you want a desktop, but you don't need the pro specs, which you probably don't, considering it's got an M3 now, unless you're a professional creator or something. So
right.
that's where I see this, or somebody that just is, I do work at my desk and I never go anywhere else, or like I said, a family sharing a single computer. That's where I see this as relevant, and it still to a certain extent competes with the Mac Mini and the Mac
Hmm.
Studio depending on what you need this for. So it's a great
Right.
computer, um but I think it's a smaller use case, and we know for a fact that the top selling Mac period is a MacBook Air, and
Right.
right behind that, I think, are probably the MacBook Pros, I would guess. So the desktop computers just don't sell nearly as much, which is why they never went to the M2. They just went M1, and they could rev this every 2 years from a processor standpoint, and
Right.
it's not a
Right.
problem.
Yeah, and also too, it's just the M3, so no Pro, no Max, um, definitely no Ultra. So just the M3, which is a good speed bump for anybody that's looking for it, but it's not really a standout device. But
Yeah,
again, it
and
looks really good. It looks
it
really good. It
does.
always looks good. Every model of the iMac always looks good.
And I mean, it starts out at $1,300, which is pretty good. So if you don't need a laptop, that's just a little bit more expensive than, a MacBook Air, and you can get that. And I mean, you can start bumping up the memory and the storage and all that kind of stuff. But I've got to think that people that buy this one are probably buying the base model and just
Yeah.
calling it good, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. So, and again, like we said, no new colors, no space black, but I believe it has a gray already. So,
Yeah,
but no black version.
6 colors plus a silver.
Yeah, yeah,
Everything Apple makes has various versions of silver, including every
yes,
iPhone Pro that they made this year is just some variation on silver.
yeah. So again, no big deal, but it is a big deal to someone. So let's go back to talking about those processors, Greg. Who needs what?
Mm.
When we talk about fast, faster, and fastest, right? Because that seems to be the approach that they're taking. Who really needs what?
98% of people can get the regular M3 in whatever machine
Right?
they decide that makes the most sense for them. If it's they don't have the MacBook
Right.
Airs with the M3s yet. I'm assuming that'll be coming,
Yeah, I'm
sometime
sure it's
next
coming.
year. So, but the M2 is fine, right? I mean, it's not like you're getting an inferior machine just by going with the M2. But
Yeah,
so I think that M3 is probably for almost almost everybody.
everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. And then I think if you go to let's go clear to the other end, right? If you go to the Max, I think that's for high end.
right.
Super. They talked about being able to use big AI models, deal with big
Hmm.
AI models using it, and if I think of maybe scientists running, stuff that
Yes,
they used to have to run on a supercomputer, which is amazing that they can run it on their desktop or
right.
potentially even their
On
phone.
something this thin, on a
Yeah, yeah.
laptop this thin, right?
Yeah, so I think that's the graphic artists, if you're doing giant 3D modeling and all of that kind of stuff, I think you definitely need to
Yeah,
consider going up to that max processor or, if you need the ultra, which we still haven't heard how good it is, if you need the
yeah.
ultra, you know it. If you
Oh yeah,
don't know that you
yeah,
need the ultra, and actually that probably applies to the max too. If you don't know that you need the max, you probably
yeah.
don't.
You probably don't. Yeah. So, and just to add to that, I think if you're sitting there and you're like, "Oh, this is going to be very expensive. I really want this." If what you do for a living, if you have a thought that the Max is going to be the M3 Pro Max is going to be too expensive for what you need, it's not for you.
Yeah.
It's not right. These are people who whatever they produce, whether they're making feature length animation or like you said, scientists or whatever, they're going to go and buy this laptop like it's nothing, right? Because this
Yeah.
is just going to add to, you know what I mean? The price is not going to be a factor to them.
Yeah.
If it's a matter to you, it's not for you. So M3 Max aside, that's going to be for, like you said, professionals, scientists, people that are making Pixar linked movies, animation, and
Yep.
graphics and things like that. The company's going to be buying those. The price doesn't matter one bit to them. So I have here Joe's pros and everyone in between, right? So the average Joe is going to get the M3, and it's an awesome
And it'll
processor.
probably be more than they need.
Yeah, it'll probably be more than you need. They just looking at those numbers, and again, we're not going to go into all of the specs and all of the details, but just with the GPU and the CPU, that's going to be way more than anyone needs, right? So that entry level MacBook, and again, I'm calling it entry level. It's still a MacBook Pro,
Yeah.
right? It just has an entry level um,
M3 chip.
processor, the M3
Yeah.
chip in it. That's going to be good for 98% of the people. Now, if you're someone that requires a little more, you're doing graphic art, animation. You're a podcast creator, content creator for YouTube. You're doing a lot of video stream editing and stuff like that. Then the M3 Pro, a little more pricier, but it's going to be what you need, right? That's going to be the processing level of what you need, right? Even if you're, you know, if you make a living from your laptop, right? If whatever content you're creating, if you're getting an income or whatever for it, then M3 Pro would be a good choice for you, right?
Yeah,
So
there's
just
one.
looking at that.
Yeah, sorry, Jason. There's one other thing that goes along with that, which is
Mhm,
I'm just trying to make sure I say this correctly. So, yeah, it's going to be faster. Like if you think about video rendering, right? The Pro's
mhm,
just going to do it faster, and
right.
that's great. Um, But the other thing that is the difference between the 14-inch with the M3 chip versus the
Mhm.
14-inch with the Pro or the Pro Max chip is ports. So,
Yes, right. That's
um,
right.
yeah, so they all come with MagSafe. So you're going to charge via MagSafe. Now you can charge in one of the Thunderbolt ports, but
Right.
for the entry level one, you get two Thunderbolt ports.
Yes.
And for the Pro or the Pro Max one, you're going to get three Thunderbolt ports. And I'm just trying to find it here on this comparison page. I know it's in here. There it is. Yeah, so you get an HDMI port, you get a card slot with both of them, and then you get two Thunderbolt slash USB C USB 4 on the entry level MacBook Pro, the 14-inch, right, with the M3 chip. But then you get
Mhm.
three Thunderbolt 4 ports on the Pro or the Pro Max or the Max chips, and that's
Right.
actually down. I mean, um I'm looking at my Intel MacBook Pro right here, and it's actually got four. Now, one of them you would have to use to charge. So, that takes away one. So still I have three.
Mhm.
And I'm actually currently using all four USB-C ports, not to charge because I'm doing pass-through charging from my monitor. So I've got two monitors
Right.
hooked up, and I've got a microphone and my phone as continuity camera because I like to tether that in. So I'm actually been struggling with this for a week now, even on the old
Mhm.
models, figuring out what I'm going to do. So that's the other thing to think about. If you're big time into peripherals and don't want to have a USB-C hub or that kind of stuff, you may want to consider that other machine for that. Pretty much everything else is the same, other than you can get more memory and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another consideration. But I think that's for I think well, we'll talk about this more in the post show
Yeah.
too, right? But I think if you're a creator or an influencer, and I like how you said it, if you make your living on this machine, then it's probably worth it to go up, and it's not that much more expensive.
Right.
So if you want more on that, stick around to the post show because Jason's got to try and fix my brain on some of this
Right.
stuff. So, but yeah, I like this. Joe's Pros and everyone in between. You know it if you need the top high end. And by the way, you can buy a 16-inch MacBook Pro fully decked out. It's like $7,500, $8,000 is if you
Wow.
max out everything. If you need
Right.
that laptop, you know it, right?
You know it.
If you make money off of this laptop, you probably want the Pro chip. And
Yeah.
for everybody else, you want the Air or the entry level. And it just
Right.
depends on what your needs are.
Right. Right. And and back to the Max again. That price tag is it's outrageous. So either the company's going to be buying it, or someone's company is going to be buying it, or you just need it. You know you need it. So.
There was a great article several years ago when they were talking about Pixar, and they were talking about how Pixar, for every feature film they bought
Mhm.
everyone that worked on the film the brand new highest end
Yep.
computers that they
They
could
maxed
buy. And
out.
you're talking, I mean, when they announced some of those Mac Pros, right? You're talking $50,000 or whatever it is, computers,
Right.
and you get
Right.
multiple high end monitors, that cost $10,000 each or whatever the case may be. They don't even blink,
Yeah.
and they don't recycle them at the end of doing the feature film. They buy the next one because it's
Yeah.
more
Because
powerful.
yeah, it's more
Yeah,
powerful because
and
they take a couple of years to produce
yeah,
some of these films. Yeah.
and it isn't just about how fast can it generate the animation, right? But it's also about how many times can they
Yes.
generate, right? And how much detail that they put into this stuff. So if you need it like that, you know it. And I'm glad I know that I don't need the Max chip.
Right. Right. So and more on that too later. More on it. And this was I had to start before we got into pricing and stuff. But yeah, I was actually surprised to hear what you said you were going with. So, but we'll get into that in a post show. So let's talk about what we're going to recommend to someone and why. Right. So I said at the top of the show, for me, it's still the MacBook Air, right? The 15-inch MacBook Air. One, it is a really capable, very capable, and impressive laptop. It just is. even though we got new ones coming this week or next week, and well, you can pre-order this week, they'll be available next week. Late November, we'll start having the more higher end stuff like that. But if someone were to ask me, even after seeing the show, hey, which laptop should I buy? That MacBook Air is still a very good machine, and that's still going to be my recommendation. The MacBook Pro, it has those new specs, right? Newer processor. Um, it is coming in at the lower price at $1,500, right? And again, there's some trickery with that, some Jedi mind trick that Apple's using with that. But even at 1,500, for that entry level, it's not that big of a jump over the M2,
Yeah,
right? The all the comparisons, those big numbers were all compared to the M1, not the M2. It's just a little leap, a little advancement. The speed bump that you would expect over the between the M2 and the M3. So I still have to recommend that MacBook Air.
yeah. So I've got the comparison up right now. So I'll talk in terms of the 13-inch compared to the 14, because
13, yeah, yeah,
and they are M2, right? We don't know when we're going to get MacBook Airs with the M3 chips. They can
right.
probably just press release that, so it could happen anytime, right? Because they're not going to change
Yeah, they're
anything
just gonna start
else.
sending them out. When you go in to buy
Yes.
one, it's just gonna have the new chip in
Yep.
it.
So if I look at a 13-inch, base price is $1,099 versus $1,599 for the entry level MacBook Pro 14-inch versus
Mhm.
$1999 for one with the Pro or the Pro Max chip, right? So you get a slightly bigger screen, probably not going to notice a whole lot. Yes, you're
Not
going
gonna
from
notice.
M2 to M3, right? If you need a bigger screen, you go to the 15-inch MacBook Air, right? You
Right.
just do that and then you're good to go. But between the two, it's M2 versus M3, but you got the same number of cores, the same number of GPU cores. You can get the same
Mhm.
amount of memory, the same amount of storage. Battery life is 18 hours on the Air versus 22 hours on that entry level 14. So there is a
Yeah,
slight battery difference there. 4 hours is pretty significant, right? But I
I
don't
think so.
know. Is it enough? So beyond that, it's still you get a better display in the 14-inch because now they're getting Liquid Retina XDR versus Liquid Retina. They're a little denser from a pixel standpoint, brighter, all that kind of stuff. Most people are just not going to care. I need a
Right.
laptop so that I can write papers, answer my email, maybe watch some video and stuff on it. But
Mhm.
I am with you that your default pick should be the MacBook Air. Period.
Yeah,
End of story. Just pick your size. Pick between whether you
yeah.
want the bigger screen or whether you want the smaller screen. And then I think after that, your default, if you say no, I need more ports. And actually, I don't even know if it has more ports because I think the MacBook Air has two Thunderbolt. Yeah, no, it has
I
two
believe it's
Thunderbolt
just
ports,
2.
but it doesn't have an HDMI port or a card slot. So if you know you need that, that's a differentiator. Then the MacBook entry level 14-inch is your next choice. You go up the price. I really think
Yeah,
you do. You just go up the price line until you hit on the one that's within your budget and that makes sense.
right.
And
That has
everybody
the
should
specs you
start
need.
with a MacBook Air. And they still sell the M1 version of the MacBook Air, which,
Mhm.
to be honest, the 13-inch version of that, if you are on a tight budget and you're going to be a student going to college and you're not going into some high-tech science or
Right.
engineering thing, you probably are okay with that from a budget standpoint. I would spend the extra $100 and get the M2 chip because
Yeah.
it's only $100 difference. But if you're really on a tight budget, that one's good too. So start with the Air, then go to the general 14, and then if you need the others, you'll know it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good choice. I don't agree with the M1. I think anyone should be done with that. That $100 price difference doesn't justify it. Now, if you find that same one, for $800, you know what I mean? A Black Friday sale, because these things are going to be on sale, right? They're going to try to dump that inventory. Black Friday sale, any kind of November or end of year deal or something like that, you can find that thing, the M1 I'm referring to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You can find that around $800 or something like that. Then definitely jump on it. That's an awesome deal.
That's the budget one, right? That's the I'm a
Right,
college
right,
student, I'm not on scholarship, I've got to buy my own computer, I'm working
right.
2 part-time jobs, I can't afford to,
Yeah,
go up big time, and I'm a political science or a history
right,
major,
right.
right?
Yeah,
And so
no architecture, no
right.
very system intense software that you have to run for your class or something like that. So yeah, if you can find that thing for around the $800 range, M1 processor, then I would say jump on it.
Yeah.
If you're able to go with that entry level MacBook Air, then yeah, definitely get that one because I don't think now with it being $100 cheaper, I don't think
Yeah.
that's a good enough deal to jump on. So.
Now let me ask you this question, Jason.
Mhm.
Do you buy a MacBook Air now? Or do we think they're coming sooner?
Wait
So
for the
you might want
M3.
to wait for the M3 or for them to turn around and sell the M2 at the $999 price, right? And get rid of
Right.
the M1 version. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think it was coming soon, they would have mentioned it, right? If it was coming this year, they would have said late November or look for it during the holidays or something like that, right? Because they said, holidays this year, holiday 2023 or something like that. I don't think it's coming this year. I could be wrong. Again, we don't have any insider knowledge or whatever. Um, but they would have said it if it was coming soon. So I'm thinking early next year, maybe even the spring, maybe
Yeah.
even with the iPad refresh, they'll just mention it like, oh yeah, there's M3 MacBook Airs too now. But I think they're still too new, right? They were just updated early this year. They probably still have a ton of them, and it just doesn't justify sending that hardware back to get those chips,
Yeah.
basically refurbishing it themselves and all that. They probably still have, hundreds of thousands of units at at stores around the city. And yeah, I don't think they're coming this year.
I'm
But
thinking
again,
it's
I could be
March.
wrong.
I'm thinking we could have a
Yeah,
big event in March where the entire iPad lineup gets revamped. I
right.
actually
The
think
minis too, the studios.
we might get a press release on the iPad mini before too long. I could see
Yeah,
that because that would be a pretty decent holiday seller, I would think. A little
I
bit
think
better
so.
iPad
Yeah.
mini. But I'm thinking March we might get MacBook Airs
Hmm.
and all of the iPads revamped. And we could possibly then see the Ultra chip with and the mini and the studio and the Mac Pro. Or,
Right.
maybe it's a March for one set of products and an April for another. So here's the thing. If somebody, in your life said, I'd like a laptop for Christmas,
Hmm.
get them the 13 or 15-inch MacBook Air with the M2
Right.
and just
That's
go
what
with it.
I'm grabbing their hand and I'm taking them to the store. This is what you're getting.
Do you want this
It's
screen
an awesome
size
laptop.
or this screen size? And tell me
Right.
which color you want because you can go get them in the store, right? No big deal. So,
Yeah. Yeah. They'll be in stock.
all right.
So that's all I had for the show today, the main show. We just wanted to discuss what we thought, give our thoughts and opinions on the scary fast, is what they called it. So I think to sum that up, I think the pricing was a bit scary too, but of course they're not gonna they're not gonna
Yeah.
brag about. I mean, they're not gonna throw that in that the pricing is scary, but yeah, yeah, definitely. So um, but that was it, folks. Thanks for listening. Again, if you're that person that everyone's going to for advice on what laptop they should get, uh, even after the event, even after all the new announcements and stuff, um, the MacBook Air
Yeah.
or that entry MacBook Pro, starting at 15, what it was 13-inch at 15.99 now. That's
The 13-inch MacBook Air starts at 19 or 1099 and
no,
then
the Pro,
oh
the
yeah.
M3 Pro is
Well,
I think
let me run the
1500.
price range here. So 13-inch MacBook Air is 1099. The
Yeah,
15-inch MacBook Air is 1299. Then the 14-inch MacBook Pro is 1599. And then the 14-inch with a Pro chip or higher starts at 1999. So you go,
right.
basically $200 to $300 increments. The further up you go, the bigger the increment
Yeah,
gets,
yeah.
right? So, and I would say that just to wrap this up, if you've got a unique scenario and you want to get our take, use the feedback form. And definitely
Yeah.
listen to the post show, because we're going to talk about some nuances in the post show when we talk about which MacBook I think is best for me, and eventually for Jason, even though he doesn't want to hear
Yeah.
it. But stick around for that, and then let us know if you've got this unique scenario, or if you've got somebody that's going into a specific thing and you want to know, should I get more? We didn't talk about things like future proofing and all of that kind of stuff, because most people just
Right.
don't need to worry about that. I mean, you could get this M2 MacBook Air and have it for 5 years, no
Yeah.
problem. Get through all of your
Right.
college, right? All 4 years of college, and until you start making some money out of college,
Right.
and be good to go. So,
Yeah. All right, folks. Thanks for listening. And Greg, you have a cool closing for us?
don't forget to do all the things. Check out
Yeah.
the YouTube channel. Like I said, we'll drop some stuff in there. We're getting some views on the videos. There's some good stuff going out there. And I think let's close out the podcast. I don't know. I tried to do a Dracula accent there, and it doesn't work.
That
So
works. All right, folks. Well, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
thanks. Bye.